Hello, BookTube. I've got a tag for you on this hot and sunny Thursday. It's the It's All Relative tag, which was created by A.J. Dunn Reads and Writes. He didn't tag me, nor to the best of my knowledge has anybody tagged me, because everybody hates me because I smell. But I've been watching people do this tag, including Michael K. Vaughan, who did a version of this tag in which the It's All Relative tag is all about familiar relationships as book tags, as book prompts. And I think the first answer of his was Dune, Frank Herbert's classic science fiction novel, Dune, which he used for one of the categories here. I thought I would go one step further and use Dune as my template for the entire tag. And I have to confess, the reason that I thought to do that is because I have watched the new Dune trailer, the new trailer for the Denis Villeneuve movie that's coming out this year. Starring Timothée Chalamet and a bunch of other people. And when the teaser trailer came out a year ago, I was bombarded with requests of people wanting to know, did you see it? What did you think of it? And when the full trailer came out, I have also been bombarded with requests of people saying, could you talk a little bit more? Could you say if maybe this alleviated any of your worries that the teaser trailer aroused, or maybe made them worse, or whatnot? And I hadn't been aware that the trailer was out, so I went onto YouTube, as one does with all of life's major issues, and I must have watched by now 20 Dune trailer reaction videos from the unpaid arm of the movie publicity industry, otherwise known as big YouTube movie channels. There is no way, I admit I am of a conspiratorial mind frame, but even so, there is no way that you can convince me that these channels, I'm sure you know the channels I'm talking about, I'm sure that you do, the top 20 YouTube movie channels, I'm sure that you know what they are, I'm sure that maybe you watch some of them or have, and there is no way, having watched all of those reaction videos, that you can convince me that these people aren't in the employ of the movie studio. It's not just that they all came to biological arousal and lost their biological chromosomal virginity in the course of a reaction video. It's that their reactions were all the same. All exactly the same. And that can't be coincidence. No way. That has to be probably that they were all invited, maybe all expense paid, plane fare, round trip, to a special screening of the first 20 minutes of the movie, and heavily encouraged to react the same way when they got back home. I watched probably 20 or 30 reaction videos to this trailer, and the half that weren't simply shilling for the movie company, the half that wasn't doing that was the half that was explicitly lying. It's like the people who make these channels, or who make reaction videos just in general, whether it's the new Dune trailer or a reaction video, a first time ever watching Lord of the Rings. It's like the people who make these videos aren't even aware of the existence of such a thing as body language. It's like if you said to them, well, but yes, I know what you said and what you yelled and what you pinwheeled and screamed, but what about your body language? They would say, my body is speaking. It's like they're not even aware of the concept that is known to parents all over the world, which is that it's fairly easy to tell when someone's lying, even when you can't factually disprove what they're saying. Body language gives it away. The half of the people doing reaction videos to this Dune trailer who have already seen it have been coerced into lockstep reaction by, I would imagine, the movie studios or maybe even the director himself. And the half that didn't get coerced in that way are lying about the fact that in their video, the video that they're showing you, that is the first time they've ever seen the content. Whether it's the Dune trailer or Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or whatever. It is easy, fairly easy to tell with someone who's not, a Hollywood star. It's fairly easy to tell from nonverbal clues whether or not someone is lying. It takes about 5 seconds in a reaction video to realize whether or not someone in the video is actually seeing the thing in question, literally for the first time. And I've never seen it be true. So, one way or another, the trailer was bad enough, but the reaction videos were even worse. If we leave all of the reaction videos out in terms of their specifics, and just concentrate on the one refrain that runs through them all, virtually word for word, which is that this is epic. I am trembling, tears running down my neck-bearded virginal face. My life has been changed by this movie trailer. Yes, I know that I told all of my subscribers that last year my beloved grandmother died, but that's one thing. That's minor league. My life has been changed by this one movie trailer. I'm trembling. I lost count of how many times I heard that. I'm trembling right now. Or, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing that. Or, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. When I can look at it and think of 20 science fiction movies that you have, in fact, seen things just like this. And also the common thread running throughout those reaction videos is that this is a great trailer for what is obviously going to be a great movie and a great adaptation of Dune. I watched the trailer many times. I didn't just watch it in those reaction videos. I watched it on my own many times, and I don't see it at all. I think I know what's going to happen here, which is Danny Villeneuve and his content sourcers, a very lucrative trade in Hollywood, tracked the novel Dune as it was galumphing across the landscape, shot it dead, skinned it, and put the skin on top of a movie that they were making. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. That we're going to be watching a Hollywood studio homunculus with the skin of Dune on it. So it'll be like the latest Star Trek incarnations in Hollywood. It will be like any number of things. You'll recognize a lot of the stuff that's going on, but it will not be in any way a really caring adaptation of the revered novel. The trailer gave me that impression over and over and over again, just repeatedly. I don't know how many indications that I saw. I have to comment on the fact that I really think it's a stylistic gamble for Villeneuve to film this in black and white. This is a science fiction movie with exotic landscapes and laser beams and whatnot. I also think that almost every point in the trailer worried me a great deal. It confirmed a lot of my negative impressions from the teaser trailer. But probably nothing did it more for me. Nothing brought home to me more that this director does not care to be loyal to the novel, in the way that Peter Jackson, for instance, very much cared to be loyal to Lord of the Rings, even as he was cutting and pasting and mixing things around. You could tell that it was done out of love and reverence to give fans a very viable movie version of the book, rather than track Lord of the Rings through the wilds of Beleriand, shoot it dead, skin it, and put the skin on top of a normal fantasy movie. If you want an example of someone doing that, you need look no further than Peter Jackson's adaptation of The Hobbit. That is a perfect example of someone killing and skinning a beloved book in order to put the skin over a movie that has nothing to do with the book and that is wildly unfaithful to it in specific and in general. Now, the Dune trailer worried me because when I was finished with watching it for the third or fourth time, I realized one of the things that was bothering me is that nothing in the trailer is a recognizable part of the book in the way that, for instance, the Gom Jabbar scene was in the teaser. And also, nothing in the trailer echoes the book in any way. Not in any way. And that's worrisome. That is very worrisome. That leads me to believe that the director doesn't really care about the book. And I saw many, many, many examples of that. The Atreides boy knows too much, or this is my Dune. Baron Harkonnen saying, this is my Dune. Kill them all. Many, many examples. But the one that probably bothered me the most got an effusive reaction, tears running down their faces from every one of the professional reaction channels. And that's a scene between Paul Atreides and Duke Leto Atreides, where Paul, first of all, calls his father Dad. It's an easy thing. It's a little thing. You might say it's trivial and nitpicking. It would never happen in the world of the book. And there's an easy word instead. Father is just as easy as dad. Instead, that's the director. Either that's the director saying to Timothée Chalamet, this is very much the Timothée Chalamet show. I'm convinced now, if the teaser trailer and the full trailer both give that impression, then that's what the movie will be. Either it's the director going to Timothée Chalamet and saying, let's not be all thee and thou-y here. Call him Dad. Or, more likely, it's Timothée Chalamet going to Villeneuve and saying, I feel like calling him Dad. And if you don't agree, I'll pull out and my lawyers will have you in court for 10 years and the movie will never see the light of day. One way or another, in the scene, Paul says to Dad, what if I'm not the future of the House Atreides? And Oscar Isaacs, as Duke Leto, says, some men aren't called, men don't decide to be great, they're called to greatness. And if that is something that you end up saying no to, you'll still have succeeded in being the only thing that matters. My son. Any of you who have read the book. Does that fit? I'm not talking technicalities here. I'm saying that's the exact opposite of what is actually said in the book. What is actually said in the book is Duke Leto over and over again telling Paul, this is your destiny. You will be leader of this house someday. You have to take on these responsibilities, whether you want them or not. It's your duty to do this. So it's not a question of, it's not a 21st century SJW message, which is no matter what you do at all in any way, you're already perfect. Because keep in mind, being Duke Leto's son, it's not anything that Paul had any control over. And it's nothing he can change. It's nothing he can fail at. If that's it, if that's all, you've already succeeded. You're already perfect. If that kind of validation fest is at the center of the relationship here, then what can you possibly expect from the rest of the movie? The rest, the voiceover line where Paul says they're picking my family off one at a time. At what point in a faithful adaptation of the book, Dune, would Paul have ever said that? And plus you have the absurdities, you have the little things. Chani is not wearing a still suit ever. The eyes of Ebad, the spice-addicted eyes of the Fremen. The Fremen don't have blue eyes. They have blue on blue eyes, which means they don't have the whites of their eyes. It's repeatedly remarked on in the book how strange it is. That once you become addicted to spice, you lose the whites of your eyes. It's not that the blue of your eyes gets more pronounced, it's that your eyes look at a distance black. And I could understand perfectly well in the disastrous David Lean movie of this adaptation of this book that you couldn't do that. That you can't ask a cast of 1,000 extras to all wear special contact lenses. And I understand that even in the Sci-Fi Channel's adaptation, that would probably have been prohibitive. It's not anymore cost prohibitive to do that. It would have been possible. It's not there. The Fremen never wear their still suits or never appear to. They've always got their head and faces open. Removing the element of strangeness and making the planet Dune seem more like Yuma on spring break than an actual hostile foreign land, underscored by the fact that in Chani's ridiculous voiceover, she says, talks about how beautiful a planet is when the sun is just rising and you can see spice in the air. That's not how it works at all. That's not how the book works. So I have a feeling that what we're going to get in the movie is an ordinary science fiction blockbuster with a skin of Dune over it. A sort of generic Hans Zimmer soundtrack science fiction blockbuster. Something that is freighted ahead of time to make back the $300 million that it cost to make. $150 million to produce the movie. Another $150 million for PR around the world. You have to make back that $300 million. And it'd be nice if you could make a profit. And Hollywood is only going to trust a kind of prefabricated, colossal, mechanated machine to do that. And it can put a skin over that machine, sure, to draw in some fans and maybe some repeat business. But only the skin. It can't actually be that thing. We saw that with Villeneuve's last commercial disaster, his Blade Runner movie, which was not a Blade Runner movie, except that it had a skin of a beloved old movie on top of what was a very predictable and mechanistic Hollywood special effects blockbuster. I think that's what's going to happen here. So I'm already preparing myself to have the Star Trek reaction to this thing. My Star Trek reaction to J.J. Abrams was this: no matter what Hollywood does with this intellectual property, it can't take away my memories of what this really is. This isn't it, but it did really once exist, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. And the same thing is true with Dune. I love the book to distraction, and I'm fairly affectionate towards the science fiction the sci-fi channel adaptation. I think it's particularly good. But a big screen movie doesn't affect that at all. I don't have to think about it at all. The worst part of it, like I mentioned in my reaction to the teaser trailer, is that this movie is going to be Dune for a whole generation of people. And I have a feeling that I have a stronger feeling now than ever before, especially with the last scene in the trailer. I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but the last moment in the trailer is what I guess is the Fremen. They appear to be wearing bright metallic armor. They don't wear bright metallic armor. They wear Fremen clothing because they're adapted to the desert. But it appears to be the Fremen in bright metallic armor fighting what I guess are Imperial troopers. And one of the Fremen stabs to death an Imperial trooper, and then he stands back in a Hollywood reveal as his face armor, Iron Man style, mechanically recedes from his face. And it's Paul. It's Timothée Chalamet. And he's a tiny bit sweaty. And it's so clearly a Leonardo DiCaprio Titanic type thing to position this kid as a separate nation. As not just a Hollywood star, but something that has its own zip code, that has its own currency, that has inner orbits, outer orbits, extreme outer orbits, a kind of asteroid belt. So that in order to get anywhere near this kid, you have to go through the asteroid belt first. These are people who barely ever meet the people who are in the inner ring. Then you have to go to the outer ring and navigate your way through that. And then you get to the inner ring, you're still a long way away from the kid. He doesn't care at all. He's busy buying and selling human beings, commissioning a seat on a spaceship, or whatever it is that these non-human creatures do. This movie is clearly designed to position him to be that kind of thing. And for all I know, it will succeed. But one way or another, the hope that I had for another big screen adaptation of Dune, I eagerly awaited the one that came out 40 years ago, and it was a hysterical disaster. Just unbelievably awful, just hilariously bad. And I was disappointed. I walked out of that movie theater bitterly disappointed. And in my mind, I thought, well, you might live long enough to see another big screen movie adaptation of this book that you love, and maybe it will be better. And then I heard rumors that the money was being funneled into this project, and I got my hopes up, and my hopes deflated just a little when I realized that it wasn't going to an ordinary director, someone who cares about pleasing the audience. Then instead it was going to an auteur. Auteurs in the 20th century were people who had distinctive artistic visions of their own. In the 21st century, an auteur is someone who cares about not pleasing the audience. He doesn't want to please the audience. The rest of it is peripheral, but the main goal is I don't want to please them. In this case, the audience is Dune fans. So my optimism took a hit, but it regrew. I thought there'll be a whole bunch of other people involved in this project. Maybe some of them will fight for the integrity of the book itself. And then the teaser trailer came out, and my number one reaction was, this is the Timothée Chalamet show, with a whole bunch of guest stars. But it's mainly about his face. The movie is mainly about his face. And then that depressed me, and I went a while, and then the full trailer came out. Full trailer gives me even more of that impression. So we will see. There wasn't a detail about it that gave me any kind of hope at all. A sandworm rises up out of the desert when Paul and Jessica are running from it after having been cast out into the desert. They're running from this sandworm. It rises up out of the sand and then appears to look at them. It doesn't try to get at them. It rises and stops. Now, it could be that in the movie, the explanation for that is that by that point, they've reached rock ledges where the worm can't go. We've been told in Dune books that the worms will still try. They won't just hover in midair. But one way or another, what it looked like in the trailer is that the worm stops in order to look at Timothée Chalamet. So we will see also this business of the Emperor has ordered House Atreides to go to Dune and bring peace, and that is what we will do. That said, a few seconds after, the Chani voiceover says the Outworlders came and despoiled our world. Their oppression is all we've ever known. When in the book, Duke Leto plans on extracting spice from Dune, same as the Harkonnens did. Maybe not as brutally, but he's not nationalizing any of the spice trawlers. He's not giving the proceeds over to the Fremen. He's still planning on being an Imperial Duke, and I doubt that will be in the show. But anyway, that trailer put me in mind of the It's All Relative tag. Bet you thought I forgot. And we're going to go through the It's All Relative tag with Dune in mind. So question number one is, my answer is going to be the same as Michael K. Vaughn's. The prompt is Mamma Mia. Recommend a book with a mother character who is pivotal to the story. That would be Lady Jessica, who is exiled to the desert with Paul, and it's largely through her help that he survives. By this point, a lot of his other memories have awakened, so he is well able to navigate the desert, but he still needs her, drastically needs her, in order to make inroads with the Fremen. And her character is well portrayed throughout. When they go into the desert, she thinks the worst about her husband. She doesn't know yet that he's dead, but in the book, she's sure when she flees into exile that he distrusted her at the end, and that wasn't true. And we know that as readers, but she doesn't at the moment know that. She's a wonderfully complex character who comes back in later novels and gets more and more complex. So I'm going to say Lady Jessica. Then prompt number two is Papa Don't Preach. A book with a father character you like or despise. In this case, I'm going to say like, and it's going to be Duke Leto. Paul Atreides' father, who I think is... The more I reread Dune, and believe you me, when the movie comes out, I will be rereading Dune. Absolutely, I will be. The more I reread Dune, the more I like how complex Duke Leto is portrayed. I like that Frank Herbert, as the 21st century phrase would put it, leans into that, even though one of the very first things we're told in the book is for the father, nothing. That no matter what else happens, Duke Leto has to die. I still find it fascinating. Prompt three is Brothers and Sisters, a book with an interesting sibling relationship. In this case, it would be Paul Atreides and his sister Alia, who are about as weird and interesting a sibling relationship as you could ask for until you get to the next generation. Because Paul has had his memories awakened by the spice trance. He is the Kwisatz Haderach. But Alia is, if anything, even more than that. She's had all of her ancestral memories awakened while she was still in the womb. So she doesn't have the rock. Paul has the rock of his individual singular life to hold him in place against the storm of all these other memories, all these great personalities going back millennia. Whereas Alia doesn't. She's never had a self separate from them. And they are brother and sister. That, I think, is fascinating. Again, it becomes more fascinating in later books, but it's still fascinating at the end of Dune. Then prompt number four, it's been 84 years. A book you like that is multigenerational or chronicles a character's whole life. Again, this would be Dune. Not even just the Dune series, but Dune itself, especially since in Dune, not only are Paul's past memories awakened, but his prescience kicks in. He sees himself. He sees many versions of himself down the line, many possible alternatives, and many of which he's dead, and can't quite see who kills him. So I'm going to say Dune for Paul Atreides. Prompt number five is You Complete Me, a book with an interesting marriage as a central element to the story. And here I, of course, can't say Duke Leto and Lady Jessica, because they don't marry. Duke Leto rather cynically, but with her full cooperation, keeps her as a consort, but does not officially marry her because he wants to keep some of the other great houses maneuvering for his hand in marriage. If he marries this woman who is the love of his life, the only person that he loves, if he marries her, then all of that political potential goes away. And she understands that. She's been a Jesuit. She understands that as well as he does. So she's content to head his table, to head his household, but not to be Duchess. So I'm going to say instead of Duke Leto and Jessica, I'm going to say a married couple that I find so fascinating that I almost wish they had a book of their own. And give Brian Herbert time enough, and he will certainly crap one out. And that's Count Fenring, Casimir Fenring, and his wife Margot, who is Bene Gesserit. We're told a lot of things about Count Fenring that are very interesting. We're told that he is weasel-like, ferret-like, that he's small and furtive, but in a rare example of a comparatively rare example in Frank Herbert's fiction, where someone who is physically unpleasant to look at is not evil. We're not told that Count Fenring is evil. Instead, we're told something far more intriguing about him, which is that he's an almost Kwisatz himself. That the breeding lines created by the Bene Gesserit to create this male Reverend Mother almost converged in him. They didn't. We're told he's a chemical eunuch. So he can't continue their breeding lines, but he's still married to a Bene Gesserit, and they are power brokers behind the scenes. And the little glimpses that we get, there's one scene in particular in Dune that's fascinating. The little glimpse that we get of them together makes me wish I knew a lot more. Made me wish that Frank Herbert had written some sort of short story, novel about their life, what their life is like in the Imperium. I especially like to know something. They disappear completely after Dune. And I especially like to know what happens to them. What does Paul Atreides make of them? Count Fenring is in the audience at the end of Dune when Paul calls out Feyd-Rautha and they fight. For a minute, Paul wonders if maybe it's Count Fenring that he's going to fight, and could this man kill me? Paul's prescience has never seen Fenring, a very good indicator that Fenring is close to being the Kwisatz Haderach himself, is that he's not present in Paul's prescience. But Count Fenring and his wife were power brokers for the Emperor. And at the end of Dune, the Emperor is an exile. He's in peaceful Kaiser Wilhelm-style exile with a legion of Sardaukar off somewhere, and Paul is in control of the Empire. I'd love to know more about what happens with Count Fenring and Lady Margot, but I'm still going to nominate them as a married couple that I found interesting. Then prompt number 6 is Picture It, Sicily, a book with an interesting elder character, i.e. grandparent, great-grandparent, etc. And for me, there is a character in Dune that fits this bill. Very interesting, although we never meet the character and only hear a tiny bit about him, and that's the so-called Old Duke. Not Duke Leto, but Duke Leto's father, the Old Duke, who in Frank Herbert's notes, his name is Minotaurus, and who ruled Dune for a long time, and died. The one detail that we learn about the Old Duke, the concrete detail, is that he died in the bull ring, that he was killed by a bull, and the family preserves the bull's head, including the bloodstains on the horns. We don't learn much, in detail about him other than that, except for his personality. His personality is invoked several times. There are several Atreides retainers who knew him. It wasn't that long ago, so they knew him, they knew his son, the Duke, and they know the grandson. They know Paul Atreides, and always the impression is that the Duke was impressive. The Old Duke was impressive. Thufir Hawat at one point says that he could convey a whole paragraph in the intonation of one word, and in the weird commanding attitude that Paul exhibits at the end of Dune is compared by a couple of different people who have reason to know as being very similar to the Old Duke, far more similar to the Old Duke than to his own father. So I'm going to say Minotaurus Atreides. So I would love to have a short story or a novel about that long period on Caladan, but not by Brian Herbert. so I'm never going to get it, in other words. Although for all I know, on fanfiction.net or Wattpad or something like that, probably there are a million Old Duke stories. Probably people have just gone at it. I should look and see in case any of them are any good. Then prompt number 7 is Friends with Benefits, a book with a found family or friends as family element. This is, of course, true of Dune. Because Paul and Jessica don't find servants in the desert. They don't even find allies. The Fremen don't really make alliances like that. Instead, they find family. They are bonded into Stilgar's true group in the most intimate ways possible. The total trust, the total confidentiality. That is all much more family than it is anything else. It's a tribal relationship, but most readers of Dune have never had any firsthand experience of tribal relations. I have spent a good deal of time in tribal societies, and it is pretty much an extended family. I'm going to include them in found family. Then prompt number 8 is I Think We're Alone Now. A book with a character who has lost, left behind, or abandoned. Could also be a story about an orphan or adopted character. Of course, I'm going to say Paul Atreides here, who is... Jessica doesn't really enter into the calculations of House Harkonnen. They're mainly concerned with wiping out the legitimate line of succession of the Atreides. And that means Paul. And Paul is cast out into the desert. He and his mother are very specifically not executed. Instead, they're sent into the desert, into the teeth of a gigantic Coriolis sandstorm, with the assurances that such a storm, there is no chance of surviving. The old Baron Harkonnen, wants it to be that way so that he has deniability. But it's the ultimate form of casting someone out, to cast someone into an inhospitable desert in the teeth of a sandstorm with monster worms on the ground. So I'm going to say Paul. And then prompt number 9 is Fur Baby, a book where a pet or animal is a part of the family or plays an important role in the book. And of course, that also fits Dune because the sandworms play an incredibly important part in the novel. An important part that starts to dawn on Paul Atreides. And I'm not 100% sure how much Liet Kynes, the Imperial planetologist, knows about how crucial the sandworms are to spice, to the production of the spice melange. Everybody on Dune knows that worms guard patches of spice, and that if there's a spice blow, a worm will almost always be nearby, and that if you set up a spice trawler to harvest spice from the surface of the sand, a worm will come. Their territory seems to be bounded by this natural resource. But Paul and Liet Kynes, and then later, of course, Paul's son, come to realize the absolutely essential role that sandworms play in the spice. And, of course, the spice is central to the Imperium. It's central to the entire civilization that all of these books take place in. That civilization is based on faster-than-light travel, so that humans aren't just encamped on their own worlds, unable to go anywhere. The Imperium is entirely based on the Holtzman dive, on faster-than-light travel. And faster-than-light travel is only possible if you're not going to come out of faster-than-light travel inside a planet, inside a star, which means you need navigation. And since you're talking about navigating through space-time, you need prescience. You need the ability to foresee the future, at least in a limited way, to know that this navigational path is safe. And it's that very limited prescience that is inculcated and encouraged by the Guild. That's their use of the spice, is to use. Their Guild navigators are the only people who can do that. And they are only able to do it because of spice. They couldn't do it on their own. Machines might be able to do it, but they're forbidden by the Butlerian Jihad, so it has to be enhanced humans. And spice is only found in one place. There have been no substitutes. Nothing like it found anywhere else. So understanding the relationship between the sandworms and the spice is incredibly important if you want to rule the spice. So anyway, there you go. That is the It's All Relative tag. I decided to do it all, just an all Dune version, because Dune was on my mind because of that trailer. The trailer is the last glimpse we'll see of this thing until it comes out. It's coming out on, I think, HBO Max and in theaters at the same time, because Hollywood is trying to determine whether or not the COVID epidemic destroyed in-person movie theater going. It didn't appear to do that for Black Widow's opening weekend. Theaters were packed. And, of course, you may know or may not know that Black Widow had a very impressive opening weekend. The box office take dropped precipitously after that first weekend. Precipitously. Well, that is not a good sign. If we are really reaching a sort of Thunderdome movie existence where no matter what a movie's exorbitant budget is, it needs to make it back in the first weekend, that's pretty bad. That's prohibitive towards anybody making any kind of movie. That isn't an absolute sure thing. And Black Widow dropped off a lot. I've seen a lot of different numbers, varying from 60 to 80% from the first weekend to the second. I I don't know what explains that. It could be that people didn't particularly like the movie, that they went and then didn't go back. That might explain things. It's one of the more likely events. I saw the movie and didn't like it at all. I thought the parts of it that weren't dumb were boring, and most of it was both. If the majority of people who went to see it had that same reaction, that would explain the huge drop-off in box office. Villeneuve's Dune is eye-wateringly expensive. I don't think that's been really highlighted in any of the movie press kit stuff about it. You can almost never find truly objective movie coverage in print or on YouTube, I have now discovered. The YouTube movie channels, the ones with more than 50,000 subscribers, are embarrassing. By and large, embarrassing. If you know of one that you think I don't know about, that you don't find embarrassing, feel free to let me know. It would be very encouraging to watch something like that. Something that knows what it's talking about. And isn't just cheerleading so that the person making the video isn't struck from the list of people who get to the next exclusive screening. I realize the movie industry has been trying to control critical reception in exactly that way for a long time, long before there was an internet, but it still bothers me. It still bothers me a lot. One way or another, this movie has to make a large amount of money, and I don't see a large crowd of people doing that for this, at least not in physical movie theaters, unless the gamble about remaking Timothée Chalamet as Leonardo DiCaprio pays off. Unless all the screen time that is devoted to his face in Dune pays off. If that happens, then it could make $200 million. We shall see. It won't be long now. I will. The next time that I talk about the movie will be once I've seen it. I'll watch it and report back. I don't think I'm going to have much to report that's any good. I mean, the trailer was just so bad. And that in conjunction with how many reaction videos I saw of people clearly deciding ahead of time that this was the defining event of their entire lives. And I wanted to say to some of these people, I was watching them, they were saying, I've never seen anything like this. I'm trembling. They have tears standing in their eyes. I wanted to say to some of these people, how about a mashup between how you're reacting and what you're saying right now and what you were saying 6 or 7 years ago when The Force Awakens came out, when the trailer for that movie came out. You had the exact same reactions then. You had tears standing in your eyes. You were trembling and kept reporting that you were trembling. You said, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, after a while, doesn't the fact that you are a wholly owned subsidiary of the movie theaters sort of become obvious? One way or another. There is a chance. There is a chance that the full movie will turn around these reactions on my part. There's a chance that I will like it. I think it's unlikely because the director is not only an auteur but a blithering idiot. And someone who obviously has never read Dune and probably had never heard about it before he decided to adapt it to the screen. Which means I think it's more likely that we're going to get a Dune skin on a normal Hollywood blockbuster. You got the gruff character, you got the noble, self-sacrificing character, you have the heartthrob, you have the wisecracker, you have peripheral women who shouldn't be peripheral in a Dune adaptation, especially when the director has already virtue signaled about how the gender discrepancy in Dune makes him a little uncomfortable, so he's going to gender swap some characters. All of those elements fit with a pre-made Hollywood mechanical blockbuster. All of those elements are already there in all of those blockbusters. If this is one of those blockbusters with just Dune terminology painted onto it, well, then I'll be very disappointed. But the key I made earlier in this video was still true, which is that it can't remove Dune. I still have Dune. I will always still have Dune. Just have to think about it that way. The J.J. Abrams approach, you just have to think about it that way, that no matter what they do to it, I will still have Dune. So, anyway, I'm going to wrap up this tag video, which is only nominally a tag video. I'll make sure to note that in the video's title. And I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.